My name is Marin Blake, and if you've ever worked a double shift until your bones hummed, you'll understand exactly why that morning broke something in me. I had just finished a 14-hour overnight EMT shift in Albuquerque. 3 cardiac calls, 1 rollover crash, 1 overdose, and a kid who didn't make it, even though we tried everything. My hands were shaking by the time I clocked out. My uniform smelled like adrenaline, sweat, and burnt coffee. My whole body wanted one thing: 3 uninterrupted hours of sleep. Just 3 hours. That was all I needed to function as a human again. My kids, Theo, 5, and Ivy, 3, were half asleep in the back seat of my old Subaru as I drove north toward Rio Rancho, where my parents lived. The sky was still the color of ash when I pulled into their driveway. I could barely remember how I got there, just the sound of the wipers scraping across a dry windshield, and Theo whispering, "Mommy, home soon?" while hugging his stuffed fox. I lifted Ivy into my arms, her curls sticking to my neck, and walked toward the front door. My legs felt like wet rope. I knocked softly. My mom opened the door wearing her faded turquoise robe, her hair flattened from sleep. She didn't even say good morning. Her eyes flicked from me to the kids and tightened instantly. "We're not watching them," she said, voice sharp, like she was swatting away a stray dog instead of her own daughter. Behind her, my dad sat in his recliner, the TV glowing with some fishing show. He didn't turn his head, didn't blink, just raised the remote and turned the volume up. My heart sank. "Mom, I just need 3 hours. I've been up all night. I'm beyond exhausted. I have to sleep before they wake up again. Please." "You made those kids. They're your responsibility, not ours. Not anymore." Theo tugged her robe, reaching for a hug he always expected. She didn't even look down. Ivy stiffened in my arms, sensing the storm. I swallowed hard because my voice was starting to shake, and the last thing I ever wanted was for my kids to hear me break. "Mom," I whispered, "I'm not asking you to raise them. I'm asking for 3 hours so I don't fall asleep at the wheel or collapse on the floor." "No," she said, folding her arms. "We're retired. We don't do this anymore." Behind her, my brother Colton appeared in the hallway, wearing gym shorts and holding a cereal bowl. He smirked like this was entertainment. "You heard her," he said. "Figure it out, Mare." That was the moment something inside me, something quiet and tired and patient, finally snapped. Not with screaming, not with drama, just a clean fracture. I straightened my back and held Ivy a little tighter and said very softly, "Okay, you're not responsible for my kids." Mom lifted her chin, satisfied. I took a breath. "And I'm not responsible for your mortgage, your truck payment, or the credit card I've been covering for the last 2 years. Her face changed in an instant. Shock, then fear, then anger. Dad finally turned down the TV. Colton muttered something under his breath. But before any of them could say a word, if you've ever felt like your family treated you like a walking ATM, let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, raw, honest, and real, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, this one's about to get even messier. I stepped back, gripping my keys. Mom reached out, her voice suddenly frantic. "Marin, don't be dramatic. What do you mean you're not paying? The bank, your father, Colton's situation?" I cut her off. "I mean exactly what I said." Then I walked toward the car. Theo looked confused as I buckled him in. "Grandma mad?" he asked softly. "No, baby," I whispered. "Grandma's just busy." Ivy was already asleep against my shoulder by the time I clicked her into her seat. As I shut the car door, the morning sun crept up behind the houses. Mom stood on the porch, clutching her robe. Dad lingered by the screen door, and Colton stared with his cereal bowl like this was some sitcom cliffhanger. I backed out of the driveway. None of them waved. None of them apologized. But my phone started buzzing before I even reached the end of the street. Mom, Dad, Colton, all calling at once. And with every vibration, I felt it. The panic was starting. Theirs and mine. What I didn't know yet, what I was about to learn, was that cutting them off financially wasn't just a boundary. It was a detonation, and everything in my life was about to shift. The drive back to Albuquerque felt heavier than the sky pressing down on the Sandia Mountains. My hands shook on the steering wheel, not from exhaustion anymore, but from the kind of sadness that settles so deep it burns. Theo had fallen asleep mid-sentence, his little fox tucked under his chin. Ivy's breathing was soft and steady, her pacifier bobbing with each breath. They looked peaceful, unaware of what had just cracked open in our family. The contrast hurt more than anything. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex in Los Altos, the sun had fully risen, painting everything warm and golden. It didn't reach me. I carried Ivy upstairs first, her warm little body melting against mine. Then Theo, who clung to me sleepily, whispering, "Mommy tired?" in a voice so soft it almost broke me. Yeah, Mommy's really tired. Inside, the apartment felt too quiet. Normally, mornings were chaos, cartoons, cereal spills, hunting for missing shoes. But now, the silence felt like a physical weight. I laid the kids on their beds, pulled blankets up to their chests, and watched them breathe. Their innocence made my chest tighten. I slipped out of the room, closing the door gently. And then I leaned against the hallway wall and slid down until I hit the floor. I don't cry easily, not after years of responding to accidents, overdoses, and the worst nights of people's lives. But the tears came fast now, hot, angry, tired tears, the kind that don't ask permission. My whole body shook as I buried my face in my hands. I thought of every night shift I'd worked since the divorce, every toddler tantrum I managed alone, every bill I paid for 3 different households, mine, my parents, and my brother's. I remembered the first time Mom asked for a temporary little loan, how she said, "You make good money, Mare. We're proud of you." That pride only showed up when my bank account did. Back then, it didn't feel like exploitation. It felt like being a good daughter. It felt like helping family. But standing in their doorway that morning, looked at like an inconvenience instead of their exhausted daughter, I felt years of hurt snap into focus. I thought about all the times I rearranged shifts to bring groceries to their house, the holidays I worked so they wouldn't feel alone, the night I drove across town after a 12-hour shift because Dad didn't want to wait for a plumber. And I thought about how they looked at Theo and Ivy. My kids. Their grandkids. Children they barely knew because retirement was supposed to be peaceful. I wiped my eyes and forced myself up. I boiled water for oatmeal, though I couldn't eat. My hands kept drifting to my temples, rubbing slow circles. The apartment felt too big and too small at the same time. I walked to the fridge, saw the drawings Theo made, stick figures holding hands under a sun, and I pressed my fingers to the paper like it could steady me. It didn't, because underneath all the exhaustion was something softer, something raw, something that whispered, "You deserve better than this." But it was chased by another whisper, darker. What if I really can't do this alone? I stood there between those two truths, one trying to lift me up, one trying to pull me under, and realized I had never felt more alone. And yet, for the first time, I also felt the faintest spark of something else. A beginning. Or a breaking. I couldn't tell which yet. I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. Even after the kids drifted off into their warm, perfect little dreams, my mind stayed wide awake, replaying everything from that driveway. My mother's cold stare, my father's deliberate silence, Colton's smirk like I was the punchline of some family joke. By the time the sun pushed high into the sky, my phone was buzzing like a trapped hornet. Mom, we need to talk. Dad, call us back. Colton, fix this or you're going to regret it. Regret it? That was new. Bold. Stupid. I ignored them until curiosity, or maybe dread, dragged me to my banking app. The numbers loaded slowly, like the screen itself hesitated to show me the truth. Then I saw it. 3 cash withdrawals made in the last week, 2 for $600 each at an ATM in Rio Rancho, 1 for $450 at a gas station I'd never even been to. All charged to the credit card I had added my parents to as authorized users 2 years ago, just for emergencies. I stared at the screen so long, my eyes blurred. Emergency? What emergency was my dad gambling through at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday? What emergency involved my mom pulling out almost $700 right after getting her hair done on Friday? My chest tightened. Not the panicked kind, but the kind that comes before a storm. I scrolled further. There they were. Payments for Colton's truck insurance, automatically drafted out of my account. Late fees for my parents' mortgage, covered by me for the 6th month in a row. A Target charge from last weekend, $289 that I absolutely did not make. My heart raced. My hands shook again, but this time not from exhaustion. This time it was anger, pure, heated anger. Because suddenly, the truth snapped into place. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't me being dramatic. This was years, literal years, of me carrying these people on my back while they pretended it was normal, while they pretended I owed them, while they pretended they were victims whenever I dared show signs of collapsing. I replayed every memory that now felt poisoned. Dad joking about my big EMT paycheck, Mom saying, "Honey, family helps each other," right before asking for another $300. Colton promising he'd pay me back when things stabilized, which was funny, considering nothing about him had been stable since high school. The anger swelled quick and hot. I opened the folder of screenshots I kept, proof of every transfer, every payment, every emergency my family dumped on me. 6 years of it, $48,000, maybe more. And for the first time, I didn't just feel tired. I felt used. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Colton. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "What the hell, Mare?" Before I even said hello. "Mom's freaking out. Dad's yelling. You need to fix this." "Fix what?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "The money you all keep taking without asking? The way you treat me like a paycheck?" "It was just a loan. Chill out. Mom said you'd overreact like this." I felt the spark. A clean, bright spark of fury. A loan requires permission. You don't get to take my money at 2 a.m. and call it a loan. "Oh my God, you're seriously doing this over a couple $100? It's not a couple $100. It's thousands, and it's years, and you know it." He went quiet for a moment. Then he said the sentence that turned my anger into wildfire. "Look, Mare, you don't get to just cut us off." There it was. The entitlement. The belief that my life belonged to them. I let out a breath. Slow, cold. "Watch me," I said. Then I hung up. I stood there in the kitchen, the phone still buzzing with more incoming messages, and for the first time in a very long time, the anger didn't scare me. It fueled me. Because anger, when it comes from betrayal, isn't just rage. It's clarity. It's proof that the wound is real. And that morning, for the first time, I finally saw my family for who they were. Not a safety net, not support, not love. Just a debt I never agreed to pay. And that realization was about to change everything. After I hung up on Colton, the anger that had been burning so hot suddenly flickered and went out. What replaced it wasn't relief. It wasn't strength. It was something heavier, like grief settling into my bones. I sat down at the kitchen table, The same spot where I paid bills, packed lunches, sorted medical reports, and convinced myself year after year that everything was fine. But the silence in the apartment now felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. I opened my laptop, almost on instinct. My fingers moved before my mind caught up. Google Drive, folder, family expenses, document, shared support plan.xlsx. A title I once thought made it sound responsible, fair, loving. Now it felt like sarcasm. The spreadsheet loaded slowly, each line appearing like another slap. Mortgage payments, $27,600 paid by me since 2019. Truck insurance, $5,280 over 2 years. Utility bills, $3,400. Groceries, $1,800. Credit card bailouts for my parents and Colton, $4,900. Gas money loans, $600. Random cash transfers labeled things like just until Friday, emergency dentist, help please, short on rent. I kept scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. And the number at the bottom, one I had typed in manually every January, blinked back at me like a confession. $48,060. Nearly half my annual income. A number big enough to be a down payment on a house. Big enough to wipe out my student loans. Big enough to change my kids' future. But instead, it had kept my parents' air conditioner running. Paid off Colton's parking tickets. Covered birthday gifts Mom wanted to buy for the grandkids but didn't have cash for. I stared at that total until the words blurred. And then something inside me broke. Not in anger this time, but in sorrow so deep it hollowed me out. I had done this. I had let this happen, not because I was weak, but because I kept believing they'd change. That one day my mom would say, "You've done enough, honey." That my dad would look up from his recliner and say, "Let us help you for once." That Colton would pay back even $5 he owed us. But they never did. They never even tried. Tears hit the keyboard before I realized I was crying. I pressed the heel of my palm to my eyes, trying to hide the sound of my own sobs from Theo and Ivy's room. Something about crying in the daylight felt more humiliating, like grief wasn't supposed to happen when the sun was out. And the worst part? I didn't know who I was mad at anymore, them or myself, because I had been holding everything afloat, and the moment I let go, even slightly, the whole damn ship started sinking. It made me wonder if I had ever truly been standing, or if I'd been drowning quietly while pretending I was fine. My phone buzzed on the table. Another voicemail. Then another. Mom. Dad. Colton. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I closed the laptop slowly, like shutting a casket, and whispered into the empty kitchen, "I can't do this anymore." And for the first time, I meant it. Not in anger, not in frustration, but in a quiet, exhausted truth that came from a place deeper than fear. A truth that hurt more than anything so far. Because admitting you're broken, that's the first step to changing everything. It's strange how clarity doesn't always arrive like a lightning strike. Sometimes it comes quietly, slow, steady, like a sunrise you didn't notice until the room is suddenly filled with light. For me, clarity came while staring at that closed laptop, my reflection faint in the dark screen. I looked exhausted, hollow. But I also saw something else behind the tears and the tremble. A woman who had survived far worse nights than this. A woman who had carried children out of burning cars, held strangers' hands as they took their last breaths, and kept showing up for every shift no matter how much life had bruised her. If I could survive all that, I could survive saying no to my own family. I picked up my phone, not to answer their calls but to call my bank. My hand stopped shaking with each digit I dialed. "Hi, this is Marin Blake," I said when the representative answered. "I need to review some unauthorized charges and remove a few users from my accounts." Unauthorized. For the first time, I used the right word. The woman on the phone, calm and kind, walked me through everything. We reviewed the cash withdrawals, we verified the Target purchase, we looked at the insurance payments and the mortgage drafts. She asked if I wanted to file fraud claims. For a split second, guilt bit at me. Then I remembered my mother's voice that morning. "We don't do this anymore." "Yes," I said. "File them." Next, we removed my parents from the authorized user list, then Colton. Then, we reset my card limits, added two-factor authentication, and locked any transfer over $100. The control I hadn't felt in years started to return. Not fully, but enough to breathe. When I hung up, I opened my email and started attaching documents: bank statements, screenshots, payment history. I wasn't sure yet who I'd send them to, but my instincts told me I would need these. Then I opened the family group chat. The typing bubbles from my mom appeared instantly, like she had been waiting with the phone in her lap. My dad sent a thumbs-up emoji, which made no sense. Colton spammed, "Answer me, fix this, you can't do this." I ignored them all. Instead, I attached the exported spreadsheet, the one with every dollar I had paid over 6 long years. I added photos of the unauthorized withdrawals, the insurance drafts, the mortgage payments. Then I wrote, "Effective immediately, I am no longer paying any bills for you. This is the record of everything I've covered. Don't contact me about money again." I hit send. A simple tap, but it felt like detonating a bridge I had spent years building. Instant chaos erupted. "Mom, Marin, delete that right now." "Dad, you're being emotional." Colton, "What is wrong with you?" Mom again, "This is embarrassing. Family doesn't treat each other like this." Dad, "Fix the mortgage. They'll call us." Colton, "Mom said call her. Do it." I set the chat on mute. With the noise drowned out, the apartment suddenly felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating, just mine. I walked to the kids' room. Theo now sprawled out, one leg dangling off the bed. Ivy had somehow kicked her blanket to the floor and curled up like a little cat. I covered her gently and brushed hair from her forehead. Watching them sleep always softened me, but tonight it strengthened me, because I realized something simple and powerful. My family wasn't the people I shared blood with. My family were the 2 little humans in those beds. Everything I did from here on out would be for them, not for people who used guilt as currency. I stepped back into the hallway, exhaled slowly, and whispered to myself, "You're allowed to choose yourself." And the moment those words left my lips, something inside me shifted. A calmness, a resolute, a quiet fire. Not rage, not panic, just certainty. I didn't know what would happen next, not yet. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the fallout. I was ready for it. Because surviving isn't enough. Sometimes you have to rebuild. And I was finally laying the first brick. Fallout didn't wait. It arrived the next morning, loud, messy, and exactly what I'd unknowingly prepared myself for. It started at 7:12 a.m., just as I poured Cheerios into 2 little bowls. A hard, frantic knock rattled my door. Ivy flinched. Theo froze with his spoon in the air. I checked the peephole. My mom stood outside, still in her robe, mascara smudged like she hadn't slept. Behind her, Dad sat in their SUV, engine idling crooked in a visitor's spot. My stomach dropped, not in fear, But in exhaustion, they hadn't even given me 24 hours. I cracked the door, leaving the chain on. "We need to talk," Mom demanded, voice hoarse. "No," I said, calm but firm. "Not like this." She shoved, forcing the door against the chain so hard the metal groaned. "You canceled the auto pay. The bank called. Do you have any idea what you've done to us?" I felt Theo's little hand slip into mine behind the door. Ivy peeked around my leg. "Mom," I whispered, "stop yelling. The kids." "Don't turn this around," she snapped. "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Colton is furious, and the bank said we're behind on the mortgage because of you." There it was. The rewrite. The blame flipped like a light switch. Dad appeared behind her now, breath fogging in the cold air. "I spoke to the branch manager. They said you can reinstate it today. Get your card. Let's go." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully predictable. "No," I said. Quietly, "that's not happening." Mom's face crumpled, but not with remorse, with rage. "We raised you. We supported you. We gave you everything. I gave you a place to sleep when I was 5. Since then, I've supported you. I've kept your lights on, your roof paid, your car legal for 6 years." Dad's jaw tightened. "That's what family does." "Exactly," I said. "Family helps. But this isn't helping. It's using." His fist hit the frame so hard the door shook. Theo whimpered behind me. That was it. The line. "I want you both to leave," I said firmly. Mom's face twisted. "We'll come back. We're not done." "Yes," I said. "We are." I shut the door. Their muffled voices carried down the hall as they stormed off arguing with each other. Theo started crying softly. Ivy climbed into my lap. And even though my hands trembled, I held both of them and whispered, "It's okay. Mommy's here. Mommy's not scared." But I was tired of being scared, tired of tiptoeing, tired of apologizing for wanting respect. By noon, the next shock arrived. Colton pounding on my door like he was auditioning for a crime show. "Open up, Marin. You can't hide behind a locked door. You ruined everything." His fist smacked the wood again and again. I dialed 911 with steady fingers. "Hi, this is Marin Blake. My brother is outside my apartment, threatening me and frightening my kids." Within minutes, red and blue lights flashed outside. 2 Albuquerque PD officers arrived, separating Colton from my door. He was suddenly calm, suddenly polite. Classic Colton. "It was just a misunderstanding," he told them. "Family argument, that's all." The officer turned to me. "You want him trespassed?" I looked at Colton, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes full of the entitlement that had shaped my entire adult life. "Yes," I said. "I want him trespassed." The officer nodded. "He's not allowed back here. If he returns, call us." Colton cursed under his breath as he walked to the parking lot. His truck sputtered when he started it, the same truck I'd paid insurance on for months. He peeled out, tires squealing. By evening, my property manager emailed me the incident report and offered extra patrol from security. I saved everything. The next day, I met with an attorney one of my coworkers recommended. She wore a navy suit, spoke clearly and confidently, and didn't flinch once as I slid over my folder of documents. She reviewed every screenshot, every statement, every voicemail transcript. "You have a solid case for a cease and desist. Given the financial exploitation and harassment, we can also include a no-contact clause." "Do it," I said. She drafted it that afternoon. 3 letters, one to my parents, one to Colton, and one to all 3 together, sent via certified mail. Any attempt to contact you outside legal channels will document further harassment.
And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not triumph, just relief. A fragile, beautiful kind of relief. Of course, the fallout continued. Mom parked outside my apartment the next morning, pretending to jog in place as she watched my balcony. Dad emailed PDFs of reverse mortgage options, begging me to co-sign. Colton tried to Venmo request me for gas money, which declined automatically. But none of it rattled me anymore, because for the first time, their chaos wasn't my responsibility. Their consequences were theirs alone. I had finally stepped off the battlefield, and the war was collapsing without me. And God, did that feel like justice?
3 months passed, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives in small moments, the kind you don't realize you've been starving for until they finally show up. The first moment came on a Thursday morning. I was pouring coffee before work, the apartment still dim. Theo padded into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Instead of looking anxious the way he used to whenever someone knocked on the door or voices got too loud, he simply climbed onto a chair and said, "Mommy, can we make pancakes this weekend?" Just like that. No tension, no fear, just a little boy thinking about pancakes. It hit me harder than any confrontation I'd had with my family, because for the first time in so long, my kids weren't absorbing the stress that had lived inside our home. The shouting at the door, the guilt-laced phone calls, the exhaustion that twisted itself into the corners of every day, it was gone. Another moment came a week later when I checked my bank account and felt something unfamiliar. Stability. No surprise drafts, no sudden withdrawals, no temporary loans that disappeared forever. Just my paycheck, my bills, and the tiny savings account I'd started for the kids. I stood there staring at the screen, blinking hard, because I didn't realize how much of my life had been shaped around anticipating someone else's crisis. The quiet of financial safety felt foreign, almost unreal. But the biggest moment, the one that sealed everything, came from a plain white envelope. It showed up in my mailbox after a long shift, addressed in my mother's looping cursive. For a second, I just stood there, holding it, my thumb resting on the edge of the flap. My heart beat faster, but not from fear, from knowledge. Deep, solid knowledge. I could open it. I could read whatever apology or accusation was inside. I could let her voice back into my head. Or I could protect my peace. I dropped the letter into the recycling bin without opening it, and I felt nothing but certainty. Not cruelty, not bitterness, just closure. Because forgiveness doesn't always require reconnection, and boundaries aren't cruelty. They are survival. The fallout for them was real. When the mortgage went unpaid, the bank moved quickly. My parents sold the house in a rush, taking a loss they couldn't afford. They moved into a cramped studio on the east side, one with peeling paint and shared laundry. Dad took on part-time handyman work to cover expenses. Mom started couponing, something she once mocked people for. Colton's truck was repossessed. He filed for bankruptcy. His landlord threatened eviction more than once. He sent me emails from new accounts every few weeks, some apologizing, some blaming, but all of them went to the same place. Blocked. And yet, for all of that, I didn't feel satisfaction in watching them struggle. Not anymore. The satisfaction had come earlier, when I chose myself. When I realized I didn't have to rescue people who never rescued me. When I understood that love without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. The true peace came from something softer.
Walking through the park with Theo and Ivy, the sunset stretching long shadows over the grass. Hearing them giggle without being interrupted by my phone vibrating nonstop. Reading bedtime stories without my mind calculating someone else's overdue bills. Waking up on a Sunday without dread twisting in my stomach. Life didn't become perfect. I still worked long shifts, money was still tight, motherhood was still messy and loud and beautifully chaotic. But it was my life now. My chaos, my peace, my boundaries. And in that quiet, I learned something I wish someone had told me years ago. You don't owe anyone your sanity. You don't owe anyone access to your life. You don't owe anyone the parts of yourself that you need to survive. Especially not family who mistake your kindness for obligation. As I tucked the kids into bed one night, Ivy curled against my shoulder and whispered, "Mommy happy?" I kissed her forehead. "Yeah," I said. "Mommy's really happy." And for the first time in years, I wasn't lying.